Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 15 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together and seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. Hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. So today we'll be reading from chapter 7, the elevations, from verses 31 to 37. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. يا بني آدم خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد وكلوا واشربوا ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. O children of Adam, dress properly at every place of worship and eat and drink, but do not be excessive. He does not love the excessive. قل من حرم زينة الله التي أخرج لعباده والطيبات من الرزق قل هي للذين آمنوا في الحياة الدنيا خالصة يوم القيامة كذلك نفصل الآيات لقوم يعلمون. Say, who forbade God's finery which he has produced for his servants and the delights of livelihood? Say, they are for those who believe in this present world, but exclusively theirs on their days of resurrection. We thus detailed the revelations for people who know. قل إنما حرم ربي الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن والإثم والبغي بغير حق وأن تشركوا بالله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. Say, my Lord has forbidden immoralities, both open and secret, and sin, and unjustified aggression, and that you associate with God anything for which He has revealed no sanction, and that you say about God what you do not know. ولكل أمة أجل فإذا جاء أجلهم لا يستأخرون ساعة ولا يستقدمون. For every nation is an appointed time. When their time has come, they cannot delay it by 1 hour, nor can they advance it. يا بني آدم إما يأتينكم رسل منكم يقصون عليكم آياتي فمن اتقى وأصلح فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. O children of Adam, when messengers from among you come to you, relating to you my revelations, whoever practices piety and reforms, upon them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. والذين كذبوا بآياتنا واستكبروا عنها أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. But as for those who reject our revelations and are too proud to accept them, these are the inmates of the fire, where they will remain forever. فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا أو كذب بآياته أولئك ينالهم نصيبهم من الكتاب حتى إذا جاءتهم رسلنا يتوفونهم قالوا أين ما كنتم تدعون من دون الله قالوا ضلوا عنا وشهدوا على أنفسهم أنهم كانوا كافرين. Who does greater wrong than he who invents lies about God or denies his revelation? These, their share of the decree will reach them until our envoys come to them to take their souls away. They will say, where are they whom you used to pray to besides God? They will say, they have abandoned us, and they will testify against themselves that they were faithless. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. God the Great said the truth. The verses here begin with where God is still telling us about what he has produced for his humans, for his people, in regards to what they can dress in, and in regards to as well how to approach matters where it comes down to the places of worship that belongs to God. Now, the translation here is saying that dress appropriately at every place of worship. But here it's actually in Arabic is saying take your adornments to every places of worship. So this is where something that we have to analyze and understand that maybe some of what we are being told is incorrect. That when you are going to the places of worship, it is a way for you to show God that you're grateful for the blessings that he has given you by decorating yourself in a way that is pious as well and without crossing lines of arrogance, but to bring this beauty that God has produced for his servants for us in a way to reflect and to be thankful for it and be grateful for it. And it's also for others that are in these places of worship to recognize God's blessings on us as humanity. Of course, there are people that starts to forbid some of what God has produced for his servants, which God clearly tells us that nobody has the right to do so, that no one has this ability to forbid people from decorating themselves with what God has produced, whether it's from gold and other metals or maybe from what the sea is producing in its shells and its pearls. This is something that God has made for us that looks good in our eyes, and so that we could remember that God is also the Lord of finery, and he is the one who blesses his servants with things that are appealing to who we are as people. This is something that God has already decreed, and He told us that it is legal for us. And the places of worship that belongs to God is a good place for us to remind each other and to remind ourselves on the blessings that God has given us. So unfortunately, there's people that sit and start to say that there's certain things that God has produced in a way for them to decorate themselves, that it's illegal, that it's wrong. And another thing that God is telling us about the places of the worship, the mosques, that He is telling us to bring our endowments and to eat and drink. But notice how He brought the concept of the mosque and the eating and the drinking, which also invites us to the idea that this is also another good place for us to bring our food and drink from what God has produced for us, and so that this is a good place for us to share among each other from the blessings of what God has produced for us. And the people who are hungry and require a meal, then they have a place to go where there is food and water present. This is something that is very incredible to remember and to ponder upon, because these places of worship are for God and they're dedicated to God. And a very great example is the mosque that is present in modern day Mecca, where it is a place where people are supposed to go, designed in this way so that they would have a place to rest, a place for them to worship and remember their Lord, and a place to eat. That's why they're called houses of God. If I am going to go to your house, or you're gonna come to my house, I have absolutely no problem feeding you and making sure that you're well fed and that you're taken care of and that you're comfortable, as long as you're sticking to what is normal in regards to how humans should behave among each other. And this is also true in the houses of God. There are rules that God has set upon us in His houses, but it is a place for you to be able to rest, to remember your God, to meet each other, and most importantly, to have a meal if you need to eat. But we have moved away from that, and we have made these places of worship in a place where it seems, unfortunately, hollow inside. We have hotels and restaurants that are open around the hour, 24 hours available for you to go consume and spend from your money. But when it comes down to the houses of God, they're open for such a short time. Usually, if it's a mosque, it's the time of the prayer. And if it's a church, it's the time of the congregation, their masses. But when it comes to just everyday life, they're not really present in our daily lives. This is because the society now has taken religion as a chore rather than a way for them to actually have a relationship with God. So God is putting a good emphasis on these places of worship. Now, here God is telling us that He's detailing His revelations for people who know. And for those people who are denying what is allowed for people to have, which God has clearly produced for His people, here God is telling us and reminding us truly on what God has forbidden. There are immoralities, both things that you could do in the physical world in front of you, and then there's things that are in your mind, which God has forbade. These are things that are not allowed for you to do. These are going to go against the grain of what God has created, and therefore it's going to cause you both psychological issues and issues in your life. Concepts like fornications and adultery, or fantasizing, or following certain desires that you shouldn't desire, these are all forbidden, that actually take away from who you are as a person. And also sins, what is present to you as a sin in the Quran and what God has revealed to you as sins, and aggressing against people, transgressing. Most importantly, the worst sin that you could do is associating a partner to God. And this is where you are now making an idea where you are the one who's dictating reality, or something else is dictating reality other than God, and you have now fell into idolatry. But the wording here is very specific, and associating with God anything for which He has revealed no sanction. So this has now has a concept of authority. I'm allowed to associate the Quran to God, even though it's a book written in a language that is the Arabic language, and it's a way for people to get guided. But this came directly with the intervention of God, that this is a source that is allowed to be associated to God. Because if God says and that you do not associate anything with God, then nothing can be said that this actually came directly from God. But there are things where we are allowed to associate to God because they are from God. But if I take another book and I say that this also came from God and it didn't come from God, God is telling us that this is one of the worst wrongs one can do, is that He is inventing a lie upon God. And this is where God is telling us that those that are rejecting the revelations, that they're too proud to accept them, and those who are inventing lies about God, these people, they're going to have a share upon their degree or from the book, from what God has said. So this verse right here is helping us understand more so on what God means when he's talking about the book and the wisdom. So the book for us essentially is the results of the actions that you take. And then these actions are going to happen no matter what, because this is how God has determined the world to be. So if someone invents a lie about God, there are words that are going to be fulfilled on this person, that he is an oppressive person, that he is a person who's doing great wrong, and he is a person that is going to get deluded. And because of these delusions, his life is going to be inefficient. He's not going to find the true success in the world, nor the success on the hereafter. And the book starts to get fulfilled on them while they're living, moving away from the path of God, getting sealed, getting their eyes taken away from them, in a sense where they cannot see they cannot perceive what's truly in front of them. Their hearing starts to get cut up, and then at the same time they're going to start to have issues with their societies and in their marriages and in their families, just simply because they're sealed from the truth. And then the messengers will come, and they will take away their souls. They are now in a concept where they're dead, but right before they're dying, they're going to be questioned for what they have. Now, there is something where people have realized that when some people are approaching death, in the last few minutes or in the last few moments, a lot can be told through what this person is enduring. So some people, when they're about to die, they wake up in shock really quickly. They're scared, and then they die. And you could see that they were tested in that moment, and they were very scared from what they were told or what they were being asked. And whatever was going from them, now they're no longer actually so held on to it. And then there's others where they die in such peace and such serenity. So whatever they're being questions, they were okay with it. And the answers that they were giving is good. This is something that you can actually monitor with people who are sitting on a deathbed and they're dying slowly in their last final moments. It seems like they, in their mind, had a conversation to a certain point where that conversation was actually very scary or very telling on who they are as a person. Of course, this is not for us to pass judgment on what that person is going to have to entail in the day of judgment, but it is showing us that these questions, these verses are being presented to us right when someone is being put to death. And it makes us reflect on who we are and what kind of questions are we going to perceive. Are we going to be running away from death and we're going to be scared? Or are we going to be people who are welcoming to whatever is happening, because we know that this is the step that is going to get us closer to God. This is the truth that is between us and God, and God revealing himself, which is going to be on the day of judgment. Now, there is another thing that is being presented to us here in these verses, that God is telling us that from the children of Adam, which is now all of humanity that's in front of us, God has picked messengers from among them to tell these people the signs that are being produced by God. So these messengers are capable of helping people get guided to God. And this is so that on the day of judgment, those disbelievers that denied these signs and denied what God has written down for us in his revelations and what the messengers have brought forth from God, that these people would have absolutely no chance to make it on the day of judgment because they have been warned. Now, the warning is very strong, and it's a very scary warning, that you're going to be punished for the rest of your life. You're going to be punished forever. You never want to be put into a situation, and God is not going to have this situation made where that you were not aware, that nobody told you, that you were not presented with an idea where you knew that you're going to be questioned for what you have done, that you yourself have not reflected that, hey, I didn't like this, maybe I shouldn't do it to someone else. And these warnings are so scary that it is toying with the rest of your life, not in this world, but in the hereafter. So God has made it easy for us to truly understand that this warning exists, and for us not to transgress our limits or to trespass what God has told us not to trespass, because we're going to find ourselves having a very difficult life and having a very, very difficult hereafter. But as for those people who did follow the revelations and practiced piety, then they are not fearing and they're not grieving. A lot of people understand this verse as grievance and fear that is going to occur on the day of judgment when they're going to meet their Lord. And at that point, they don't grieve anything, and they're not fearing anything because they're in a good position. That is absolutely true. But also the person who has submitted to God here in this world, they are not people who find themselves in a worry or fearful or grieve about where certain things happen. You might get in a car accident and you're still okay because you in your mind you're saying the decisions that I have taken or the decisions that someone else has taken has led to the point where I am in this accident. And this is what God has programmed, and I'm okay with it because I am trusting in my Lord. And whatever catastrophe or event that I'm going now, God is the only entity that can allow me to exit from this and remove away from me this pain or catastrophe that I'm enduring. So I just have to endure, and I know God's promise is that He's going to help me and save me. For example, He tells us, for those that say, to God we belong and to Him we will return, when catastrophe befalls them, these people will have mercy from their Lord, and God prays on them to get them out of the situation or ease the situation on them or assist them in the situation that they found themselves in. So these people, you don't need to fear and have grievances when things happen. If someone passes away, even if it's someone that is special to them, they're capable of handling it in a way that it does not affect their psychology to a point where they're traumatized for the rest of their life, where they're hanging on to a person where this person is in their grave, but yet these people are so needing of this individual that their life starts to become very detrimental, that they start to lose what they have and they start to find themselves in a position where they're severely depressed or they're loaning for this person. While the believer, they know that this is a promise that God has given us, yet we are going to live forever. So this waiting period or this time that we're apart from each other is very temporary. It's very short in the very long picture. So they take confidence and they take refuge to these ideas that saves them from having fears and grievances. But we could see very clearly here in these verses that are presented to us that we never want to be in a position where when the signs are appearing to us, that we are going to just simply follow what we saw people do before us, especially when it came down to the concepts of the houses that are set up for God. We have to keep in mind that feeding people within these houses is something that we should keep in mind. And this is something that needs to be done. And that the clothes that God has revealed to us, it is a way for us to be thankful to our Lord and to remind ourselves, like, look at how amazing this God that God has given us here in this world from adornments, and for us to look and feel good about ourselves. Because one of the things that we're going to have on heaven is clothes that is silk and it's bright, and we're going to have gold trinkets and gold bracelets and silver trinkets. It's things that are appealing to the human being to make himself feel good about himself. And this is not something that has been forbidden by our Lord. In fact, God made it for us, and so that we can be thankful and grateful for what God has produced. Anyone who wants to go against that, wants to put people down and try to put them into a cult-like mentality where they're forbidding what God has made legal, God simply tells us that these people will not find success, and those people are going to just have to stand for the lies that they have invented about God. And with that said, I hope you guys are enjoying these. All praise to our Lord, the Lord of the worlds. Peace be upon you.